painted with broad strokes by a clueless hand. Misunderstood, misquoted, and left in the dark. Are we singing our truths from dawn until dark?
Hey folks, thank you so much for tuning in to Horrible People Podcast. I'm Jen McDonald, and the horrible person that I am speaking with today is Travis Vader. Travis, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick 30-second rundown of who you are and what you do.
Jan, I absolutely love the name, the Horrible People Podcast, and thank you so much for having me on as a guest. I'm honored.
Thank you.
A little bit about me. I own a company called Silvercore Outdoors. I'm the host of a podcast called the Silvercore Podcast. And I started a gun club, which is now an outdoors club with members worldwide that I'm really proud of. Father, husband, ADHD, tons of hobbies, more hobbies than I'll ever be able to really master any of them, but like to have fun and enjoy conversations like this.
I love it. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm kind of all over the place also. As you're talking, my brain's going 50 different ways as to all the things I want to ask you and can ask you. So, Okay, this will either be a crazy podcast where everything's all over the place, or it's going to be super entertaining.
I love it. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Don't hold back.
Good. Okay, yeah, you either. Before we hit record, we were talking about, just podcasting in general. So one thing I did want to ask you is what really drove you to start Silvercore Podcast? I mean, it's something that I listen to. I've listened to tons of episodes. You have amazing people on, and it's always so educational but easy to listen to. So what was kind of the driving?
In a way, it's probably the same story as yourself. Now, I've been in this industry, in the firearms industry, in the outdoors industry for a long time. I started around 1994 when I was still in high school, and firearm safety course came out, and I started providing instruction for the general public, and everybody hated the firearm safety course instructors because they were the front-facing hand of the federal government with this new safety training, and it was a good trial by fire learning experience, and incorporated the company in 2003. And I found that life is what you make of it. And, you can look at the dark side, you can look at the light side. The glass could be half full, it could be half empty, but I just couldn't keep shaking the negativity that I kept encountering in the firearms industry, and particularly from others in the industry. And I thought, I can't change them, but I can change me. I can change my perception. I can change my outlook. I can change my job. I can do something completely different. But I think it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. You're always going to find haters. You're always going to find those who want to have the biggest building by tearing down other people's building. And I thought, is there a way that I can interject some positivity into this industry that I know and love, and both selfishly revitalize myself as well as try and change the narrative? And so I have a feeling that you and I probably have a fair bit in common when it comes to why we started our podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's it. It sounds so cheesy to say, I just want everyone to get along and, be happy together. But I mean, it's kind of true. I see so much negativity within our own industry, within our own people, towards our own people, so much competition. And yeah, competition's amazing, but it doesn't need to be negative. You don't need to be tearing somebody else down to build yourself up. So yeah, that's exactly kind of why I started this. And then I started thinking of all of the other benefits. I mean, it gets me meeting new people and able to teach myself almost how to interact with people a little bit better, be a little bit more engaging, and yeah, just grow our community and show that you can support everybody while still succeeding.
Well, the Silvercore podcast has really evolved over the years. It started off, we're talking about the hunting, fishing, outdoor community and the people and businesses that comprise it. And it's really, there's a lot of mental health aspect. There's a lot of mindfulness and wellness and outdoor industry, and a lot of really hard charging men and women who have done extraordinary things. And what I like to do is I like to convey their passion to the audience. I like to bring value to the audience in every episode and value to the guests in every single episode. And when you're talking about the benefits of it, anybody listening to this who's ever thought about maybe stepping out and doing something like this, I'd say go for it, 100%,
Yes.
because those connections that you make, you're able to talk to people that normally wouldn't ever give you the time of day. And when you start recording yourself and you listen to how you talk, you're like, did I really say that? Wow, I really got to work on my ums and ahs, or maybe there's a better way I can come across. And it's a constant iterative process of self-improvement, which extends well outside of the podcast. Because if I want to be good in here, I've got to be good outside the podcast as well. So I would say go for it and reach out to others in the industry that are doing it, because you'll be surprised. The ones that are trying to bring positivity would probably really like to see you succeed as well too.
Yes, exactly. I feel like we don't even have that many outdoors podcasts out there, or outdoors channels or content or whatever. So there's plenty of room for people to, show up and make their own podcast about this, that, or the other thing.
And
And
nobody has your voice. And that's the
yes,
biggest thing.
and personality.
That's it. I started this Silvercore company. Silvercore is a portmanteau of my grandfather, Silver Armino, my other grandfather, Cornelius Bader.
Oh my
One was a
gosh.
Vancouver police detective. The other one was an entrepreneur. And I took Silver and Core and I put them together. And I'm like, I don't want it to be called Travis Core. I don't want any part of me about this, because if I grow it and I want to sell this business, or I don't want it integrally tied to me.
That too.
But what I've learned over the years is, doesn't matter what you do, it's going to be integrally tied to you. And the less touch points that you have to yourself, the more other people can try and imitate, which is a great form of flattery, or steal, which I encountered over and over again. I thought, well, maybe it's time I started getting my voice out there.
Wow. Okay. So you were having people steal like content or ideas?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And it's an ongoing thing. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Like, oftentimes, if you have ADHD and your brain's going a million miles a minute, you probably have a whole bunch of ideas. Not all of them are going to be great, right?
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised at how far a non-great idea can go, especially if you treat it as an iterative process. Just like you were talking earlier about, hey, I started off this podcast with a certain kind of feel to where I was going with it, but I'm thinking about changing it. And if you're adaptable and able to change, you're going to be able to make anything happen. Really, you can accomplish anything, whether you look back afterwards and say, did the ends justify the means? Like, what did I have to give up to make this happen? How much work did I have to put in? Would there have been a better way? Well, maybe, but the can I make it happen is never a question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. I think that, nothing worth doing is going to come easy. You have to work really, really hard for, what you want, and it's not going to be easy, and you're going to fail, and you're going to look silly sometimes. Like, I've definitely posted stuff where I look like a complete idiot, but I'm like, oh, whatever. Like, I'll just, learn from it. And like you were saying with the ums and ahs, I mean, I'm even for my own like actual full-time job outside of this with CSAAA, I have to do a lot of, public speaking or government speaking, and I want to be better at that and catch the ums and ahs. So, yeah, it all just kind of comes together and
If
works
you
out, and there's no downside.
Yeah, if you go through the first few episodes of the Silvercore podcast, you're going to find that neither myself nor my guests have too many ums or ahs. I mean, you'd think that we're pretty good speakers, but I spent hours and days scrubbing through the audio, and I treated it as a process of trying to learn the software, because I had no idea how to use any of this stuff, right? And maybe in time, if I didn't want to be spending days scrubbing it, then I will learn how to speak better. So I still have ums and ahs now. I leave basically everything in unless there's something that's going to be kind of compromising to the individual.
Okay.
And even then, sometimes I say, do you really want this in here? I mean, I think Kyle Lamb was a good example of him. Ex Delta Force Battle of Mogadishu individual. I'm like, do you really want this thing in here? I can take it out. It's like, leave it in. It's funny, right?
Just doesn't care. And that's
No.
great. I mean, I
Mm,
like that.
yeah.
But yeah, that too. The ums and ahs just give you more work, but that's kind of how I learn. I'm always like, I learn from my mistakes, or I
Hmm.
learn from like, oh shoot, I've got to, not talk like this and with all the ums and ahs and breaks, or else I'll be spending hours editing. And yeah, it's like that with every aspect of my life. I just learn from my mistakes.
Not being afraid to make those mistakes is a very important piece of the puzzle. And, in our industry, I think that is an area that kind of stagnates some growth. People can naturally be inclined towards being risk adverse, not wanting to put their neck out there. And there is this perception, both real and perceived, of risk associated with the firearms community. And the consequence for failure or missteps can be pretty big. Like if you're running a federally licensed firearms business and you say the wrong thing, and you've got the regulators breathing down your throat, or what tends to happen more often, you have the rest of the industry that you're trying to support and grow breathing down your throat and saying, how could you say that? Or how could you do that?
Yes,
I
for
know you know what
sure.
I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So,
Been there, done that.
right. But the more that a person can learn how to make those mistakes, whether they're a mistake or not, um,
Yes.
and recover from them, the faster we're going to be able to progress as an industry. And if we have a group like what you're involved with, if the firearms community as a group will support each other, then those mistakes won't be as catastrophic as they could be if everybody is in it for themselves and everybody's just kind of a lone wolf out there, lone voice in the wild, which can often be the case.
Definitely. Yeah. And like you were saying, even if it's not necessarily a mistake itself, it's the way it's perceived, the way
Mm,
it's broadcasted. Like you learn to shoot, like next time something like this occurs, you get ahead of it, or you manage it differently, or you portray it differently. Yeah, there's always something to learn about with your failures or repercussions.
and sometimes it's an education process for the client base or for the audience. Sometimes it's like, no, I'm this is me, I'm unapologetic about this, and here is why it's me. And you start weeding out, and you're not trying to cater to everybody. You're trying to forge a path that's going to be positive and educate people along the way as to how and why you're doing it. And if you do actually make a misstep, being able to step up and say, "Yep, I stepped in it. Sorry. Let's get on with the next point. Thanks for your patience in my learning experience here."
Definitely. And I find that builds so much trust because
Mm,
whenever I come across somebody that's able to say, like, these are the mistakes I've made and own up to their mistakes, it's so much easier to trust them in the future, for sure.
totally.
Absolutely. So you don't just do Silvercore podcast, obviously. You've got Silvercore Outdoors, you do the training side of things. I believe wilderness protection training as well, all that kind of stuff. So did you say that that started back early 2000s?
Yeah, so 2003 is when I incorporated the company. So now we're in the official incorporated version of the company. We're going on 21 years.
Oh my God,
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, 94 is when I started doing the training. And I do it on weekends, shut down in the summertime because it's summertime, right?
Yeah,
Want to
for
be out
sure.
doing summer things, surfing and fishing and hiking. And I just I saw that there was a niche there. The firearms program used to be they call themselves a firearms center, then they call themselves a firearms program. Actually, originally their website was canadafirearms.com, and a fellow I know bought the domain firearmscanada.com
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah,
bled off all of that traffic. And it was a pro firearms site, buy and sell. And he
amazing.
ended up selling that thing to me for about a dollar. And so I had that business, and I had this idea. I wanted to be a police officer, went through the written test, came top of the class. Or so they tell me. I don't know if they tell everyone that. Third place on the physical intake, but my excuse was that I had cracked my kneecap a few months earlier and I
Jeez.
could have done better. And made it so far, and they said, "You're young, you're like 20, 21 years old. We like you, but come on back when you have more life experience." So I said, "All right, I'll start a business, I'll turn what I'm doing on the side into a business, and when that fails, that'll be good life experience." but I just don't have the personality type to let things fail.
I was
And
gonna
I
say
would
it just never failed.
no, and I push against all odds. And the firearms program said, Travis, you've taken something which shouldn't have been a business and you've made it into the business, and we don't know how to deal with you, and we don't know how to deal with this. And there were, I, from my understanding, from what they've told me, Silvercore was the first company that took the Canadian firearm safety course and actually ran it as a proper business with employees and office staff and classrooms
Hey.
and sort of set a model and template to move forward from. Now, I didn't invent the question mark. I just kind of pushed something a little further forward that was kind of already there. And the client base said, we want more. How about hunter education training? How about live fire training? How about, and then we ended up doing firearms repair and maintenance for BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario for a large multinational armored car company. Basically, every armored car company in BC at one point was doing all of their gun plumbing for. And
Oh,
um,
cool.
I guess a piece I left out was before Silvercore training, I had Silvercore Gunworks and was doing gunsmithing for every Joe Blow out there. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, so
And were
kind
you
of,
doing,
yeah.
sorry, were you doing the repairs yourself or did you like hire in?
So no, I'd do it myself. So
Oh,
I
cool.
started learning how to weld and use machinery and woodworking and chemicals. Something I was always interested in, and making my own bluing salts and parkerizing chemicals. And so it was a labor of love. But when you're young and it's putting a little bit of money on the table, and I kept pushing it forward, but the training side was something that was a bit more scalable than me working on guns for the general public. And then I expanded that into extended work for law enforcement, which is great because they all ran the same platform, and then work for the armored car companies. So it's just been a school of hard knocks growing kind of iterative process.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as the policing goes, is that something you always wanted to do until you kind of realized you didn't? Like until way later on in life?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember 5 years old. That was my goal. I wanted to be a cop.
Oh,
My dad
okay, so
was a
that
cop.
early.
Yeah, he was head of the Vancouver's ERT on their first emergency response team they had. My grandfather, who I never met, was a cop, and so I figured, well, that's it. You get older, you become a cop, right? That's what
It's in
one
the
does.
family.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Okay. Wow. And so did you grow up like hunting or anything like that?
I grew up with so we had a commercial fly fishing lodge, which sounds really fancy,
Yeah.
but the reality of it was that there is a group of friends. It was two, three, four. I think it was five, and then it went down to four who'd purchased a property out past Kamloops in the remote area, and at one point was a commercial lodge. And one of the owners is a lawyer, and he was very fastidious, and every year he'd keep that commercial license going. So fishing, yes, in a place where you had to hike in or fly in by helicopter because the planes speculation whether they could take off again after landing, given the altitude and size of the lake. But hunting, no. And it's something I always wanted to do. I recognize that connection with nature that's found by learning about the animals and the flora and the fauna. And that was something that I got into later in life.
Okay. So how old were you when you actually got into hunting? Like, was it high school years or was it?
Well, I mean, in my 20s, would be the time when I got into it. When I guess I would hike around in the
Okay.
bush with a rifle, and I mean, I would hunt grouse and squirrels, and I'd eat them, but I had no idea about licensing and seasons and all this other stuff
Yeah,
that went along with it. I didn't have that as something that I grew up with. I knew I really wanted to, and I thought that I was doing things right. And um, now that I'm older, I realize that I wasn't, but I can help other people now do it the right way.
definitely. And I feel like that happens with a lot of people. Like, I'm in a very rural community, so a lot of them grow up on the farm, like shooting muskrats and stuff, and they
Mm.
don't know anything about licensing or laws or restrictions or whatever. They don't care. They shoot it and go. But yeah, I mean, I started in my 20s as well, so it's kind of neat to hear that you did also. I mean, I just kind of something I've always been interested in trying out. I just loved being outside, loved being outdoors, and then kind of threw myself into it by taking the course, figuring out where I could go hunt and
What made you want that?
to start hunting.
Mm,
I think initially it was the self-sufficiency aspect. Like I
mm,
loved animals, loved being outside. And I did grow through, I mean, I used to be anti-hunting.
mm,
When I was way, way younger, like a kid, no idea what I was talking about, just killing animals is bad.
mm.
But I, of course, like did some research, started to learn more about it and realized, no, this is conservation. This is actually really good for the species. Hunters actually care about the animals they're hunting. They're not just shoot and go. And the fact that you can obtain your own meat and, butcher it yourself, process it yourself, cook it yourself, all stuff I was super interested in. So yeah, I was like, okay, I'll
So
try hunting.
I think that's a conversation that's had then. I think that's how other people, if you're looking at growing it, is you look at those motivating factors. If that self-sufficiency was big with you, I bet you there's a lot of other people that self-sufficiency would really resonate with, especially like after COVID.
That's what I
Uh,
was going to say. Since COVID, I mean, even looking at trends online, it seems like hunting, gardening, foraging, all of that preserving has skyrocketed. People want to know how to take care of themselves.
and self-sufficiency, right? How to take care of themselves. That's
Definitely.
So that's why I changed it from Silvercore training to Silvercore Outdoors because it resonated closer with uh, what I enjoy. I like rock climbing. I like surfing. I like scuba diving. I just like being out in nature, and quite often that means being away from people. If
Yeah.
I'm out in the water, there's um, a tranquility to it. If you're out in the mountains, if the weather's changing, other people aren't going to want to be out there, but I'm comfortable and I'm happy, right?
I
I
was going to
don't,
ask, like, how is
yeah.
that for you? The fact that there's no people, because some people need to have everyone around. They need to party hunt. They need to group hunt like waterfowl and stuff, or always just be around people. Like, are you best when you're kind of out alone?
Yeah, yes. So one thing I recognize about myself probably when I was 20, I it's been a part of myself, but I only recognized it at 20, was I have a difficult time being in large groups, large areas, large cities. There's a dehumanizing process that happens when you're overwhelmed with people around you, and they do studies about this. They talk about road rage, and there's actual bracketed number range where under this number road rage is not really around, and over this number, I mean, you see it a lot
Huh.
because it no longer becomes Jen McDonald driving down the road, and surely she didn't mean to cut me off. She's probably just paying attention to something else at the moment,
Looking
right?
at a deer in the field. Yeah.
To why did she just do that? Why did she cut me off? And I know I can feel that myself, and I'm sure other people feel that. And that large group um, mentality is something I've always had a hard time with. Now, completely isolated on my own forever, I can do that and I can do it for a while, but it's not where I thrive as well. I do like to have my wife, my kids, close friends, and then be able to go out on my own and come back, go out on my own, come back. And having those sort of experiences allows me time to connect with nature and decompress because I get a lot of value out of being out there, and then come on back and have that social network. So I'm not the complete lone wolf.
Total. No, I feel like I'm the same way. Yeah, like I do definitely enjoy going out foraging or hunting, or even if I'm just hiking around alone. But of course, then I'll come back and I've got the people that I work with. I've got like my husband, all of that. So yeah, you do at least get that social interaction, but being
Mm,
alone outside is very energizing and yeah, definitely a little bit easier to connect with nature when you are out there alone.
yeah, and very very contemplative. You're able to kind of get your life in order too. I remember I recognized that the power of that in my teenage years. Like everything's overwhelming. You're going through your routine. We got school, you got work, you got the cycle, and it repeats every day, every week, every month. And then you get out into the vast remote, and you feel this huge decompression. You feel great, but then you reach a point where you start having all these ideas. Oh, I should do this. Why am I doing this job when I really enjoy that? Why should, and so I would sit down and I'd write these different things out. And it was only in those times, I think an alcoholic would call it a moment of clarity, right?
Yeah.
Only in those moments of clarity that I'm able to really make decisions that positively affect my life and the life of those around me. And so I would seek it out. And I found that instead of being out for 2-3 weeks, to kind of get to that point, I could start getting there within a couple of days.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like I totally know what you're talking about because I get my best ideas, or I'll even have my iPad out when I'm hunting because then I'm thinking, oh, I can like do this article for work, or I can,
Mm.
do this little project. So going back to what you had originally said when we first hit record, the ADHD, do you find that that helps your ADHD being able to go outside in nature and clear your mind like that?
Yeah, to the point where I question if I have ADHD.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with it having severe ADHD when I was in grade 3, re-diagnosed by many different doctors over the years. I was put
Okay.
on the highest dosage of Ritalin. I was told, anyways, I was on an experimental run in the province of BC. They said that they were seeing how much a kid could take and what the effects were. So from grade 3 to grade 7, I could only they could only prescribe up to a certain amount per pill size before it was considered a narcotic. And so I'd have to take about 8 of these things in the morning and another 5, 6 in the afternoon. And
That is so much.
oh, it was max dose and then just tons of them, popping these things back. And I hated it, absolutely hated it. And like I'd go outside and I'm like, how can people open their eyes? It's so bred out, not even realizing that my eyes must be just dilated completely.
Really?
Oh,
So
yeah.
you felt completely different, I imagine?
I felt I had headaches, that my appetite was totally affected. Um, I've never been in tune with myself to really have that causation correlation kind of because of this, I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
But the things I do recall were headaches, appetite, and light sensitivity. I do recall that.
Wow. Okay. So it didn't necessarily help with your focus or anything.
Teachers would come back and they'd say yes or no, and there'd be certain days
Yeah.
when I decide just not to take the stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you could sure tell he took the Ritalin today because he's doing good." I'm like, "I didn't take any, gotcha, right?" And
Idiot. Yeah, exactly. And I have a hard time with, like, I am not even close to being a doctor, but I have a hard time with, like, seeing younger kids put on medication for stuff like that because I'm like, do they need medication, or are they just being a kid? Like, are they just exploring? Are they just active? Like, I was an active kid. I maybe yeah, like, okay, I say that. But yeah, like I don't know, like you say, is it ADHD, or do we just need to explore the world?
my non-doctor approach would be no. If the inside does not match your outside, don't medicate the inside to try and match the outside. Change your outside to match the kid's inside. Talking to doctors, they have intelligent reasons and arguments as to why in certain cases it could be. And I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, and there's not everything's going to be as simple as like ADHD. Maybe there's some much deeper things going on, but the way we interact with our outside environment has a massive impact on our inside. I don't think we should be medicating people to try and get that to match for them. I get the concept of, oh, now they'll know what it's supposed to feel like, and then we can wean it off, which is always what we're told.
Okay.
But uh, from grade 3 to grade 7, I'm getting higher and higher dosages going through. I didn't see any wean off process until I finally said, I'm going to high school. I'm cutting it. I'm taking myself off cold turkey, despite everyone's protests. Can't make me take them.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's your body. Just like we. Yeah.
That's right. My body, my choice.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Totally agree. Oh, okay. Wow. So do you find that, I don't know if you mind me asking about your ADHD.
I don't care.
Do you find it impacts you like work-wise, career-wise, anything like that? Because
Yeah,
I know it can be a huge struggle for sure.
benefit and struggle.
Okay.
Depends on how you look at it. So if I look at the benefit sides, like my legs are going like crazy underneath the table here. Like I've got the cord in my hand, and I sit here and I count as we're talking. I'm counting the different coils that we have in here. So I have things that, just so the outside perspective, it's like the duck. The feet are going like crazy with the duck up top. Looks like it's
Not
calm, cool, and
moving.
collected. But I can hear the air conditioning going on despite this. I can hear the class that's going on upstairs. I'm thinking about different pieces that are going through. So the benefit is that I have a lot of ideas. And at times I will have a lot of energy to affect these ideas. And comorbidity with ADHD is oftentimes ODD, or oppositional defiance disorder, which can be well suited for an entrepreneur to be pig-headed and stubborn to push things forward. But also a comorbidity with ADHD is RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, I think is what it is,
Okay.
where you can be hypersensitive to rejection. And I see you nodding. Is there
Yeah.
something?
I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like just the thought of failing, I'm just like, oh my God, that's the end of the world.
Yeah, for me, failing has never been the one that gets me, but it's in social interactions where I find one-on-one I'm fantastic. In groups, I'm more of an introvert. So
Yeah.
it's a uh, there are pros and cons, but we're all made differently, and we all got our strengths and weaknesses. I think that I think despite all the difficulties that come with ADHD, I wouldn't trade it for anything because it provides me a perspective that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, and when you put it that way, it is true. I mean, I feel like anybody that I know with ADHD is very driven, like they're doing a lot of things in their life. They're not just sort of not like there's anything wrong whatsoever with, 9 to 5, come home and shut it off, but that's not
No,
what they do. They're always, pushing after doing different projects, different hobbies, different
and that takes its
side
toll.
hustles. Yes.
It'll take its toll. It can be physically and mentally exhausting, emotionally draining and exhausting, but coming up with management processes to deal with that, which is applicable to entrepreneurs, it's applicable to people with ADHD, it's applicable to just people in everyday life who are pushing a little bit harder to try and achieve something. And that's something that the Silvercore podcast deals with on a regular basis. It's why we have special forces individuals, SAS, SBS, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, Green Berets, all these different people from hard charging backgrounds, entrepreneurs, people that are putting themselves out there, authors, actors, actresses, and I'm hoping to just kind of distill some of that, both for my knowledge as well as for the audience.
Yeah, and I think it really does because whenever I listen to interviews like that, I learned so much and it's inspiring in a way. And you kind of learn, like, well, this is how they operate or this is how they think because we're constantly like evolving and learning and being more self aware. So,
Mm.
yeah, I definitely think that those just simple, it's not necessarily like it's hunting or fishing or gun related, but it's still kind of in the same realm and it's still very helpful for anybody listening that kind of wants to take their own path.
It it is, and the common thread always is, it's not like this person's superhuman. Like, yes, there's gonna be limitations to individuals based on whatever their genetic makeup is, right? Not everyone's gonna be able to run a miracle mile, right? Not everyone's Roger Bannister. Not everyone's gonna be able to, um, be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but
They're still successful.
yes, but they're able to create daily habits they're able to create little things that they can change on a daily basis that in time will make a big thing. And that was something that I found that separated me from my peer group when I was younger. Everyone would get around and they would talk about grand ideas. Oh, wouldn't it be great if, right? Oh, I got this great business idea, whatever it might be. And I'd pull out my notepad and I'd write it down. Or when I got a little bit older, I'd pull out my Palm Pilot. That really dates me. And I'd
Yeah.
write it down in there. And then I'd ask them, I'd say, hey, that's a great idea, right? Are you going to do anything with it? Nah. Do you mind if I try something with it? Yeah, go ahead. And it's just that next little steps, write it down, and then start to take action the next day. Even if you have no idea how to take that action, like when I started my business, I need to have a Royal Bank business account because that means I'm a business, right?
Yeah,
You don't.
exactly. No.
But, yeah.
But it is, like you said, yeah, just write it down and then just start somewhere.
Mm.
Even if you don't really know where to start, just make some sort of step. You can always go back and backtrack and fill in the blanks or whatever. Absolutely. So your wife, Tiffany,
Yes.
she is always out foraging and cooking and hunting. Is she very active in Silvercore, obviously?
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I know.
she,
I've had her on here. I follow
yeah.
all of her stuff. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she's a
Um,
cool gal.
I wasn't sure if she kind of did her own thing or if, you two were partnered on Silvercore.
Yeah, originally she did her own thing and she went to university and she was the smart one who I figured she's going to always be the big breadwinner. And I'm happy just doing my thing on the side. I wanted to open up an outdoor adventure tourism company, have a commercial whitewater raft, and I would do different adventures across the province and
That's amazing.
just trying to figure things out. She was a stable one who knew how the game was played, and I was the one that's just ricochet rabbit going off the walls. And she decided she didn't like the career path that she was on, but she really, really liked cooking. And her family was encouraging her to stay on the career path because of the money involved. And I said, if your heart's not there, what's it worth to you, right? Go cook. And she
Yeah.
started cooking at, I think, Earl's, and then she was at West, between Rob Feeney's Lemire and Hawksworth's West, depending on what magazine you looked in. One was rated top in Vancouver or the other. So she was staging
Wow.
under him, and then worked for Fairmont. And yeah, she just realized she really loves cooking. She really loves gardening. She really loved learning where her food came from. And then with that was, well, why don't we just go out and hunt and get our food? And so
Yeah.
over time, after having a couple kids, it just made sense as opposed to working in a restaurant to push her passion forward in areas within the company. So
Oh, that's
uh,
amazing.
yeah, so it's worked out really well, and it takes not everybody can work with their spouse, but I'm so glad that we can.
Yeah, and I think, excuse me, oh my God. And I think the contrast is really nice because, like, that's how it is kind of with my husband and I. I'm very, like, all over the place. I've got these ideas. I've got this sort of drive to execute the ideas and all of that. And he's very, books and money and
Mm, yeah.
paper oriented. Like, this is how it's supposed to be. And I'm just all over the place doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the contrast does help form one person to.
Yeah, I push her in ways that are positive and beneficial, and she pushes me in ways the same way. So it's
That's it.
yeah.
Exactly. Definitely. Amazing. Do you guys have any like hunts or anything planned together for the near
Yeah, we
future?
got a cool hunt. Couple of friends and past podcast guests on the Silvercore podcast. We've got a group moose hunt coming up, and one of them, my wife is still feeling pretty bad about because her name bumped one of them out.
Oh no. Well, I'm happy for her.
Yeah. Um, so we've got that one. We've got one with my son. We've got have a couple of invites. One in on the Big Island, one in Texas, and I don't know, one in maybe might be happening in Sweden. So we'll see what
Oh,
happens here.
cool. What's
Yeah.
the Texas hunt?
So that would be for hog hunting. That
Of course.
was,
Okay. That's what I
yeah,
kind of assumed.
yeah. And that's the proprietor of Man Bar, Meat and Nut Bar. And he came on the podcast. Really interesting guy. And he's like, you got
Very
to come
cool.
down. Same as Combat Flip Flops. That's,
Oh, yes. I
yeah.
heard that one actually just the other day.
Griff, he's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm setting my buddy up. He's going to be a guide. Let's do some hunting over here on the Big Island. And
Oh, that's
that's,
awesome.
I think, the massive value to a podcast, because I don't monetize mine, but these connections you make with people, the connection I'm able to make with you now that you have Starlink and we can actually have a
Yeah, I
conversation.
know. Oh my God. Not sponsored by Elon Musk, but yeah, this is
Yes.
so much better. Oh, well, that's what I was going to say also. I have to re-record so many of these
Mm.
episodes with people because they were choppy and it's just so hard to talk whenever there's a freaking 20-second delay between each
You
person.
you were some work. If anyone here is listening, has listened to the Silvercore podcast where you were on it, I think it's one of my only ones that's audio only, and I
Oh,
there is some editing to make that one work and flow. Thank you for getting
I
a proper internet connection.
yes. Oh my God, it's about time. I felt so bad after that podcast because I felt like I was really stuttery and didn't really know what to say. Especially since I had just started with CSAAA. So I'm like,
Mm.
well, like I don't know what to talk about and like what I can talk about, what I can't talk about. And then the internet connection was just like out of control. I don't know how you managed it. You should have just been like, okay, we're not doing this.
Oh, I just prayed that it would all work out in the cut afterwards, and it did.
I mean, it did absolutely, but yeah, for sure. I feel like that was a lot of work.
Hey, but you're worth it. And in fact, that was two separate times I think that we tried to make that work on that one, wasn't
It
it?
was absolutely.
But you make time and you put the effort in for things that are worthwhile, which
Yeah.
you are.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. This was yeah, definitely a good chat for sure.
Well, can I try chat about the Horrible People podcast?
I would love that. Absolutely.
Okay, so I get a sense why you started the Horrible People podcast, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but firearms owners are oftentimes considered horrible people by those who are unaware outside the firearms community, and likely because that's quite often how we're portrayed in the media. Am I on the right page?
Yes.
Am I on the right
You
thread here?
are. And nothing opened my eyes to that more than watching how certain politicians talked to people that were professional representatives of the hunting and firearms community in the House of Commons or in debate, when we were just advocating for our rights and simply explaining, not our rights, I don't want to start that. But advocating for the firearms and sort of saying this is why the prohibitions wouldn't work. I feel like a lot of the people that were out there talking, a lot of the witnesses were looked down on and spoken to like they were, less than. So yeah, I'm like, damn, we're still human beings. Like we're not these savages going out and shooting animals and, being crazy yahoos with the guns.
Right. And so the purpose behind the Horrible People podcast would be,
I want to show people that. I mean, I feel like through conversations like this, people learn more about the people behind the gun and the hunting accounts and behind, they see the pictures of people smiling holding up a dead deer, and I see that all the time. They're like, how could you be smiling at a moment like this? Like, this is disgusting. But they don't see who the person is behind that. Like, I find you are really good on your social media at showing more than just, the kill and the gun and all of that. But a lot of times people just see the hunt and they just see the gun and they just think that, yeah, with the media and the government and everything, I feel like we're just poorly portrayed, and hopefully we can reverse that a little bit.
So I honestly, when you came up with this and I saw what you're writing about, and from our chatting, my feeling is you're onto something possibly very big. But I think as it works forward, there'll be changes. Once the rubber hits the road, there's going to be some quick changes. My concern would be that people get stuck in a victim mentality, right? They're like, oh, poor us. And they'll start relaying all the negative things. And when you asked me earlier about have there been times that people have tried to use it, I kind of diverted off. because there have been times, but it's generally based on two things, and that's going to be money or power, right? Or perception of money and perception of power, and how can they use that in order to further their own ego or power or their earning capability. And so outside the firearms community can use negative stereotypes to further their own political agenda and their own cause, not necessarily because they believe in it, but because it can paint their opponent into a position where they now have to explain or wear a position which looks otherwise unfavorable. Inside the community, people will use that as well to try and further their own means. And I don't know if everybody actually realizes the extent that people will do that to. And maybe they're so afraid of losing their firearms or losing their ability to go to the range or hunt that they will start clamping down on everybody else around them, say, you got to follow the rules and then some and our new rules. And
Yes.
so,
No, I'm glad you said that for sure. About the victimization also. I mean, I feel like we live in a world right now where not everybody, but so many people feel like they need to be a victim and I don't know, they just always almost want to be like felt sorry for. And it's like, no, you're not a victim. Like you're dealing with some shit. It's going to happen. That's what it is. You fight through it. So yeah, I
mm,
mean, we can't just sit there and dwell on like, well, so and so made fun of me online and said these nasty things. So you just kind of, you know, push back, push
mhm.
past that. Absolutely.
So I think that the conversation, in order for it to be really pushed forward, we can't make the gun the conversation, because I think we're falling into the same trap as the people who would demonize the firearm. The firearm's got nothing to do with it, really. It's just an inanimate object that happens to be used by people who are hunting and trapping and farming and sport shooting and whatever it might be, but it's not about the gun. What you're trying to do with the Horrible People podcast, I think, is make it about the people. The only one point that I think might be a hindrance to massive success is the emphasis on the firearms community, because I
Yeah.
think then we're just preaching to the choir. And the only people who'd want to hear it are other people who are already interested in the firearms community. Whereas I think there's more than anything, there's a process of othering that's happening where we are being made to be the others, the us against them. And gun owners are not the only people out there who've been othered. And I think there's a lot of people out there. And if you say, hey, I'm Jen McDonald, I'm a firearms owner, I've been othered, and I'm talking with so and so today who's been othered for whatever their reason is, and creating an awareness campaign and model about what it means to be othered, how the media can other, how people can be educated to look out for different telltale signs if that's happening.
Yeah.
And now you've got a client base. Now you've got a prospective guest base which spans the globe and all different races, backgrounds, whatever it might
Everybody.
be, and just telling their human stories. But each one, you're talking about, I'm Jen, I'm a gun owner, I've been othered, and it's just a process of building that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been trying to think of ways to kind of expand that because I don't want to just be preaching to the choir. Like you see so many posts or podcasts or videos or whatever, and it's saying like we're good people, but you're just telling it to other people that already know, like, yeah, yeah, I know we're good people. So that's it. I was trying to think. I mean, I'm like the foraging, I never used to really share that. I started to share it to kind of drive in more people from the foraging and then they'd
Right.
see more of the hunting. And I'm like, okay, well, there we go. So there's
'Cause
there's that. But yeah, I like that idea because it reaches such a broader spectrum of people.
Because the conversation isn't about the gun, really. It's about,
The
why do you forage?
misunderstandings
Well,
and that, yes, that too.
self-sufficiency. Okay. Why do I hunt? Well, I want to know where my food's coming from. I'm concerned about what I put on my body. I want to connect with nature. Like all of these different pieces of the puzzle are truly interesting and provide that perspective. Why do you sport shoot? Well, I enjoy the competition, and it's but it's not about the gun.
No,
necessarily.
exactly. That's it. I mean, the hunting is not about the gun. Yeah, I carry the gun. I appreciate my firearm because it helps me obtain food and it helps me sport shoot and all of that. But like you said, it's not the gun. It's everything. There's not a negativity against guns. There's a negativity against the like perception of what gun people are and how they use guns. And yeah,
Yeah, and I think for a long time, I mean, the media perpetuates that. The just watching movies and how firearms are portrayed. I mean, a violent person is a violent person, regardless of what they're using. The it the gun in the hero's hand doesn't make him a hero, doesn't glorify him. The gun in the bad guy's hand doesn't make him extra bad. I mean, the hero would be a hero regardless of the gun. The bad guy would be a bad guy regardless of what it might be.
exactly.
And I think that's a hugely powerful thing that you're hitting on, because you got a fantastic name. I think that the premise of just being able to talk about people's life stories. I wrote you a mission statement too. Do you want to hear it?
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
It says, mission statement: horrible people breaks down barriers and fosters understanding by exploring the diverse lives and passions of individuals often misunderstood or misrepresented. Through engaging conversations, we challenge stereotypes, delve into the values, stories, and emotions behind the labels, and reveal the common humanity that connects us all.
Oh my God, that is wild. I like
Yeah, I don't
that.
know. That's
No, and my little brain gears are going, and I'm kind of thinking about how many people are quote unquote othered nowadays, especially now. Like you see so much division nowadays.
mm-hmm.
So there are so many different categories of people that are misunderstood and misrepresented for so many reasons that I don't even know. So that's where these interviews would come in very handy.
Yeah, and if we can start breaking down the reasons why people might be othered, right? Like what is it? I mean, some of it's going to be like a psychological tribalism. There's always going to be that. It could never happen to me and mine. It's going to be you and yours. But um, looking at that us against them mentality, that can be often fostered, and having ways to be able to point that out to people, so in their everyday life they can, if they're reading through a news article, they're like, oh, hold on a second, there's some key words here. Why are they using words like this to generalize a group? Why are they using inflammatory information? Why are they having these leading questions? And um, exploring that route, I think, can have a net benefit to anybody listening to the podcast, of then sharing that with others, basically teaching
Yeah.
people how to think.
That's honestly, yes, that's what I was kind of trying to think of right there, like teaching people how to think for themselves, because that is a skill that is being lost.
I made a list of all these different things: the fear mongering and scapegoating, selective and biased reporting, simplistic or monolithic portrayals, dismissing group perspective, decontextualized and sensational imagery, manipulative framing, rhetoric, or invitation of overrunning, and historical echoes. So I put all those different things together, and I thought, hey, we'll talk about that. But I'm just going to provide all of those things to you afterwards.
Oh no,
And
that's perfect. And those are all exactly like, not to make it about the guns, but what I work with every single day. Like that's exactly what we deal with. Absolutely.
yeah, what are the challenges that you find in that? Do you find it difficult to overcome those stereotypes, or or are there ways that you found effective when talking with somebody who's got that negative mindset of dealing with you?
Um, it's just sort of approaching it on a more personal level. Like I don't want to come off kind of just changing my tone almost. Like I don't want to come off as if I'm lecturing or preaching to the person. I want to make it one on one. I'm talking to you like you're a friend. This is how it is. Like these are the misconceptions that you might have. Like if we're talking about, let's say, I don't know, somebody that dislikes firearms or somebody that doesn't agree with the agreement that CSAAA made years ago. Which
Not to point at anything in specific.
yeah, exactly. Which is all totally died down. It's all great. Now people understand. There's of course going to be, some that don't agree, which is fantastic because
Mm,
we need people that, have dissenting opinions.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just sort of being like, listen, I'm going to sit you down and I'm going to say it straight as it is, be blunt about it, tell people the facts, and they don't agree, then they don't agree. And if they do, then you did a really great job at explaining it. And they hopefully can think for themselves. But I feel like some people on a very, very rare occasion just aren't willing to have the conversation. They're not willing to listen. They're not willing to sway their opinions. And we see that more online because it's easier to hide behind, a screen name or a profile and say whatever you want to say to somebody. But when you have those face-to-face conversations, it makes a world of difference.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think you mentioned a really important thing there about dissenting opinions, being able to respect each other, even if we have
Yeah.
completely differing opinions on this matter over here, doesn't mean I disrespect you as a human or as an individual. I just don't agree with your position here. And I think
And that
that's
is something
lost.
I deal with all the time, especially in this industry. I mean, since I started in the hunting and firearm industry about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, it's everywhere. We're such a wide range and variety of people.
Mm,
And I've never taken things personally enough to really be worried about, somebody else's opinion. So it's easier for me to just accept somebody else's opinion.
mm,
But that happens so much. Like you'll meet so many other people that work in this industry and they're like, hey, Jen, like I love what you're doing. Don't totally agree with this one thing, but whatever, it is what it is. And we both kind of still can work together, do our own thing. We're all working towards the same general goal. So
mm.
yeah, it's no problem.
Yeah, I think if people outline their North Star or their general goal that they're moving towards and make that a very positive, altruistic aspiration, something that they would like to achieve, and they don't deviate that from that as they move through, because they're not going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be
No,
people who figure there's a different way or should have been done in another fashion. But as long as we're able to communicate where we're going and why, the people who are looking by can say, yeah, I see why they're doing that. Maybe they're doing things differently to get to that goal, but they're not betraying that goal.
that's the big thing. I mean, there's so many different groups, even in either a firearm community, hunting community, any sort of industry or community that there is. And each group has their own approach, each group has their own
Mm,
way of operating. And it's very clear against some of the major firearms groups that we see, like how they operate differently and how they have different goals, but they're all working towards the same like end goal. They all just want, a healthy firearms community and
mm,
healthy firearm laws that actually make sense. So yeah, I think we can just all kind of work together and respect that everyone's going to have a different opinion. And sometimes when people explain their different opinion, then your opinion changes.
yeah, fair enough. And I don't know if we're ever going to reach a point where our firearms communities will work together. Um, I don't think it will, and it might not necessarily be a healthy thing for people to aspire towards.
No,
I think that it's, as long as we're not trying to tear down the other group, even if we disagree with their approach and where they're going, if we're able to put our blinders on and work towards our North Star that I see to be beneficial, and keep not trying to, um, not getting distracted by everything that's happening left and right, I think that might be the most beneficial way for the gun orgs to succeed.
proceed.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And I mean, we don't want everybody to be the same because we want the firearm community to grow. And like we've kind of said before, it's not about the gun. So you're going to have a huge, huge, huge range of people. And hopefully that range grows and grows as the firearms community grows that aren't necessarily parts of the firearm community. They're just citizens that own guns.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a a group that just loves their guns from a cold dead hands, loves me guns,
Yes,
right? Okay, you,
totally.
you don't have to talk to them about firearms and all the rest. There's going to be a group that hates them, and there's no convincing otherwise. But the mass majority of everyone, I think, would be indifferent. And I think if they're educated
Definitely.
as to how they're being manipulated in order to achieve different means by the othering process that happens with firearms or anything really, I think those indifferent people will stand up and say, well, hold on a second, this isn't right. This isn't what I voted for. This isn't what I'm looking for. How does that achieve the end goal, that North Star that we're trying to work towards?
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize or maybe don't think of is that the vast majority of people do not give a crap about the guns and the hunting.
Sure.
They don't think about it, but they, like you said, could be not even persuaded, but like if it comes down to a vote or to supporting a certain political party or whatever, at least they'll be educated enough to make their own educated opinion instead
Mm-hmm.
of being asked, like, do you support guns or not? They wouldn't just say, no, because they see on TV like guns are bad. Yeah, if it comes to a yes or no opinion, then they'd be able to decide, like, yeah, I'm fine with people having guns. I'm fine with hunting,
Mm.
even if they, yeah, for the most part, don't care.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I like how that kind of comes back to this podcast of the othering because the masses don't care. So why are they going to listen to a podcast that's focused on firearms and hunting to learn about what? Like, yeah, I guess they wouldn't understand that it's about the person.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of othering that happens, whether it be by race, sexual
Sexual.
orientation, COVID. I mean, there's a really
Yeah,
recent prime
still.
example of othering that happened and how that's portrayed in the media and how people can be manipulated. And you ask yourself why, and it's always for a good means. Like you wouldn't want somebody to spread disease, would you? Like, are you a disease spreader?
Exactly.
It's like, Jen, you're a turkey hunter. I mean, holy crow, look at the massive firepower you're going against these poor defenseless little turkeys. And don't we have farmers who are government regulated to keep diseases out? I mean, this avian flu that could be going around, and like, why are you putting your family and everyone else at risk by? And the same thing
Firearm.
can be done for golfing. Same thing can be
Exactly.
done for.
Literally everything. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Speaking of turkeys, are you getting out for turkey someday soon?
I don't have it on my agenda because it's pretty packed right now. Next spring, yes, but for the fall, I don't have it on there. It's
Spring turkey's way better anyway.
yes, yes. So spring, yes. Fall, probably not.
Okay, nice. I know that, yeah, last time we talked, I think maybe it was like 2 years ago when I did that podcast with you.
Mm.
I think we were trying to talk a little bit about the turkey hunting and all of that.
Yeah, because you're one heck of a turkey hunter, and
I enjoy it.
I am like pretty brand new at it, and so uh, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort for a very little bit of meat. But holy crow, is it ever nice out?
And it's so exciting to hear
Yeah,
that like gobble thundering through the woods.
oh yeah.
Totally. Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for, coming on here and having this conversation with me. I'm gonna have to try and bother Tiffany to come on because I'd really love to pick her brain about everything.
Hundred
Other
percent,
side of it.
100%. Jen, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, actually, before I
Yeah.
let you go, can you please plug where people can find you
So
online, everywhere?
silvercore.ca. That's Silvercore Outdoors on Instagram. Bader.trav would be my personal one on Instagram. But really, silvercore.ca is the easiest one. We're on YouTube and a few other places as well. But yeah, oh yeah, and of course the podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the website's got all of your links and all of your connections and everything there. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right on, Jen.
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.